Sup everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about Neuvillette and everything you need to, well, maybe not everything, but everything I think you need to know about whether or not he is free-to-play friendly. Now, yes, we're going to be talking a little bit about Furina as well, because you can't get away from Furina if you want to talk about the viability of Neuvillette as a free-to-play character. And I'll elaborate this a little more as we get into the video. So let's talk about what on earth categorized nowadays as a free-to-play character. Alright, so in my opinion, free-to-play character nowadays still is just C0 with a relative free-to-play weapon. What do I mean by relative? Some 4-star weapons nowadays I think could be categorized as free-to-play. So for example, the sacrificial stuff, the frivolous stuff, I think honestly it's quite free-to-play friendly nowadays. Of course, if you're a new player who just got into the game, it is very unlikely that you have access to a bunch of different sacrificial, frivolous weapon types, so I think of them as more like pseudo free-to-play. Truly free-to-play weapons are the ones that you can craft, and as long as you play the game, you don't have to spend anything, then you can get access to these weapons, right? So how well can Neuvillette perform with craftable weapons or very old 4-star weapons? Now, judging from what we were shown in the live stream, as well as maybe a little dreaming here and there, people have made it very clear that Neuvillette feels kind of awkward if you don't have him at C1, which immediately is a huge slap across the face for a lot of people, being like, oh, well, if I have to get him to C1 to feel good, then he's not free-to-play friendly, but not quite so fast there. All right, so this is where Furina has to come in. Right now, we have no idea what on earth Furina can do or provide for Neuvillette. The only thing we know is to look at previous examples. For example, if you look at Sumeru, which is a great successful region that Hoyoverse has made a ton of money from, it would be wise for them to follow the path of Sumeru, meaning that the carries of Sumeru leans very much into the strength of their Archon. A lot of Sumerian teams would desperately want Nahida in them to provide more damage ceiling. So taking that same concept and adding on the concept of Raiden Shogun C2 making them a ton of money, so did Nahida C2, you can expect Furina C2 is going to be the big bait once she comes out. And on top of that, the main carries of Fontaine could be expected to pair extremely well with Furina. So this is where we can get back into the topic, Neuvillette at C0 free-to-play. I don't think he's going to be very good as a free-to-play unit at C0 without Furina. So a lot of people who are going to be investing into Neuvillette who don't have the resources to get him to a C1, don't have the resources to summon his limited weapon, and it hurts him even more so because as a DPS unit, you ideally want the extra stats from his weapon. So I would never really advise people to go ham on a DPS unit while also cheaping out on his signature weapon or crucial constellations. What do I mean by that? For example, if I were to recommend someone to play Hu Tao, I would really recommend them to get C1 R1 Hu Tao, meaning you get Hu Tao to Constellation 1 and then also get her signature weapon, which is the Staff of Homa. That would be the ideal recommendation to get the most value for your primo gems out of Hu Tao. But a character like Kazuha, I would very much recommend people to stick with C0 Kazuha with a free-to-play weapon. Or if you have Sacrificial Sword, or if you have a Favonius Sword, those are also great options as well, right? So Kazuha doesn't need C1, nor does he need his weapon. So when it comes to Neuvillette, if you guys know what his C1 does, it's a very quick Google search. The best unit I can refer to when I talk about Neuvillette C1 feels kind of like Hu Tao. So for people who don't know, Hu Tao C1 basically allows Hu Tao to use her charge attack without consuming stamina, which alleviates a huge issue with Hu Tao, being that you can't even sustain the entire duration of her elemental skill if you were to have to dodge in between and also want to deal as much damage as possible through charge attacks, right? So that's why getting C1 Hu Tao is a big deal. It itself does not give a huge DPS buff to Hu Tao, but the fact that you no longer consume stamina when activating her elemental skill makes it a DPS gain if you combine it with other mechanics. So back to Neuvillette. Neuvillette C1 functions in a similar way, but not really. Neuvillette C1 has a crucial line which really worries me, which states that he gains additional resistance to interruption. So what does this mean? This means that if you're standing there doing your hydro cannon and then a monster somehow taps you on the shoulder or they swing their club at you, there is a chance that your Neuvillette might get interrupted. Now, this in of itself is not a big issue, but considering that Neuvillette is also bleeding HP while channeling, you quickly realize that if you don't get Neuvillette C1, there is a scenario that you're going to have to run him with a shielder. Now, remember when we talked about Furina before? This is going to be interesting because if you bring Furina in to Neuvillette's team, that means Furina, Neuvillette, plus 2 more slots. And if you have to slot in another shielder in between, then you have 1 slot left. And let me remind you guys, there are very limited shielders that actually fit the description of what we need here. The only one that comes to mind is Baiju. So if you skipped Baiju, now it seems like Hoyoverse is going to make you make another tough decision. Are you going to get C1 Neuvillette to then not have to play a shielder healer, or are you going to then wait until Baiju's rerun to pull Baiju so you don't have to end up sacrificing the survivability problem that you're going to run into running Neuvillette as your main DPS without his Constellation 1? You see, everything eventually does tie back together. If you made a certain decision back then, thinking that there's no way this is going to impact me negatively down the line, you might be sorely mistaken because Hoyoverse knows how to get you when you are most vulnerable. Now, of course, this is all speculation. Everybody's going to be like, Walrus, how come you sound like you're so sure that this is going to happen? I am not sure that this is going to happen. But if you guys go take a look at Neuvillette's Constellations, as well as what everybody has been talking about, worried about, you would quickly start to connect the dots. Now, Hoyoverse might be playing 4D chess with us, meaning like, oh, you're going to get C1, R1 for Neuvillette because he's a DPS unit and you need his C1 to fully feel comfortable running him on the field without the need of an additional shielder. Well, joke's on you because Furina C2 solves a lot of these issues, so you never really needed to even get him to C1. Like, I'm just throwing random stuff out there, and I know this is actually going to confuse a lot more people than it helps, but it really pays to think more about this than just, oh, I'm gonna get Neuvillette because he's hot. Sure, he's hot. Cool, but I'm just gonna share a little bit of CN news with you guys. Most people in CN are not very happy with the fact that Neuvillette feels like he is a C1 bait character, meaning that a lot of people says, hey, this character doesn't even feel good to play if he doesn't have his C1, and people have an issue with that. Did people have an issue when Hu Tao came out and required C1 to really kind of come online? No, not really, but then again, Hu Tao is a freaking waifu, and Neuvillette is hot, handsome, but you know, like the vocal part of the internet oftentimes are a bunch of degenerate males. So all that being said, please be careful with the blind positivity towards Neuvillette. There's going to be people telling you he's going to be fine at C0. He's going to be fine with a free-to-play weapon. But really think about this. A DPS character is the type that needs the most investment to get what you want out of them. A support character oftentimes rely on their utility, but DPS character, what do they rely on? Damage. Now then people are going to be like, but Walrus, Abyss is not even that tough, right? You can beat it, no problem. Why do you need more damage? Well, I'm just saying relatively there are amazing characters right now that you can build with close to no resource and still get a ton of power out of them. If you're looking for strength power, Neuvillette is such a toss-up right now. You don't know what Furina does. You don't know what her Constellation does. You don't know how impactful his Constellation will be multiple patches down the line. So please proceed with caution, and best of luck to people who are pulling for him. Final word of advice is if you can wait until the last day of his banner, I highly recommend you wait until the last day of his banner, because then we'll know more about what Furina is capable of. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. Until the next time, remember to stay safe. Peace, bye-bye.